All right, this might seem a little odd. You got a payroll tax cut that creates jobs, but add a pipeline project and we get no jobs. That's because the president is threatening to veto the Republicans' new package that tries to tie the two. Senator John Thune says that doesn't make any sense at all. The Republican from South Dakota joining me right now. But he's saying no way, and you're still pushing way. Where we stand?
You know, I think he left himself a little bit of wiggle room. I would hope that he wouldn't veto a bill that has a payroll tax extension, unemployment insurance extension, a lot of other things that he really wants, simply because it includes language that would require his administration to make a decision on a pipeline that's ready to go. I mean, it's 20,000.
So it just requires making a decision. What if the decision is no?
Well, I mean, that could happen. I hope it doesn't. There isn't any reason why it should happen. You're talking about 20,000 new jobs, $7 billion in investment. That's during the construction phase, and then all the jobs that come with it. The energy. It's an economic issue. It's a jobs issue. It's an energy issue. We're doing business with a friendly country like Canada, and it benefits a lot of states that generate a lot of state and local tax revenue through this thing.
How do you pay for this?
Well, you mean talking about for the
payroll
tax thing? Well, I think the House has come up with a pretty innovative way of doing it. They've got some spending cuts in there. They're doing some things, making sure that millionaires don't get food stamps and unemployment insurance and things like that.
But there is nothing like a surtax on millionaires the Democrats had been pushing.
Right. No, it's done, in my view, what is the correct way, and that is to do this on the spending side. There are some things that income testing for high-end earners on Medicare, a few things like that, but they're really good, solid pay for us. I think the House has done a good job of constructing a package that ought to attract bipartisan support. There are many of us who have issues with the payroll tax extension in the first place, simply because we don't believe it's good tax policy when you're looking at long-term economic growth. But this is done in the best way possible, I think, and it's positioned the bill to pass not only in the House, hopefully in the Senate, and I would certainly hope the President will not veto it simply because it includes the Keystone Pipeline language.
Now, I know you're supporting Mitt Romney. Now, he was here not too long ago, Senator, talking about closing tax loopholes, credits, and all. He said he wasn't quite dogmatic on that. He said, in and of themselves, they are not hiking taxes if they have been used in the past to prevent some from paying any taxes at all. There are many purists in the party, conservatives, Tea Partiers, and the like, who argue that is a tax hike whenever you close a loophole for whatever reason. Leaving aside whether you attach it to tax reform, is closing such a loophole, any loophole, a tax hike?
I think it depends on whether it's accompanied by a lowering of rates.
But assuming that it's not. In other words, to secure a debt deal, to secure a payroll tax deal, to secure, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough vote for a lot of Republicans if you don't have the rate reductions going with it. I think you could argue they ought to be broadening the base, you ought to be doing away with some of the loopholes and some of the deductions and preferences that exist in the tax code today. I think most Americans would prefer a simpler, more clear, more fair tax code. But I think you have to get the rate reductions to go with it. Otherwise, most Republicans are going to view it as purely and simply a revenue increaser, when most Republicans view the problem, the definition of the problem, being one about spending. So could we get tax reform? I think we can, and a lot of the good work that's been done already by the Super Committee and others has produced some proposals out there that would have rate reductions on businesses, in particular, lower the cost of doing business in this country relative to those that we compete with in other parts of the world, and a broadening of the tax base, which would include closing some loopholes. But I think it's got to have both.
Why do so many of your colleagues feel the heebie-jeebies at the prospect of a President Newt Gingrich, especially the ones who worked with him?
I think that most Republicans will rally around whoever our nominee is if and when the time comes, because the real thing that's motivated...
I don't get that.
Well, I think most Republicans are motivated by one thing, and that is to make sure that we replace the current president in November of 2012. No,
I know that, but it seems with Gingrich it's visceral, it's personal.
I think that there are people around the country, Republicans, who have different people that they're behind. I obviously endorse Mitt Romney because I think he's the right person for the times. If you're talking about fixing a bad economy, you want somebody who has experience creating jobs and fixing things, and he certainly brings that as part of his background to the job. There are others who are looking for a different type of leader, and we'll see. It's going to get sorted out by Republican voters across this country as these caucuses and primaries get underway. But my view is we ought to nominate the most conservative, electable candidate that we possibly can. And as I said before, I think Mitt Romney fits not only someone who can get the job done if elected, but somebody who is electable. And I think that's going to be a key issue for a lot of Republicans.
Senator, we shall see. Very good seeing you in the flesh.
Nice to be with you, Neil. Thank
Be
you.
well. In the meantime, ho